Every now and then we're watching the news or watching a basketball game, and we see some lucky fan was brought out during the halftime and given an opportunity to shoot from half court in order to win a prize or a car or something of that nature. And every now and then someone gets it. Every now and then that someone actually sinks the shot from half court. And when they do, they win that prize. But when it happens, notice there are no NBA draft people running out onto the court to sign that person up. There are no NBA teams scurrying and jockeying for position to be the first to talk to that person about playing on their team. And the reason is we know, and the person that made the shot knows, and those NBA teams know that there's no sustainability in that shot. Also, we've known musical groups who have come onto the scene, burst onto the scene, seem to be everywhere, has a song or two that rises up to number one, and everybody's singing that song. But just a year or two later, everybody's scratching their head and saying, what happened to that group that had this song out or that song out? And we deem them a one-hit wonder. Why? Because there was no sustainability to their career. And we as believers, we need to understand as Christians that God has called you not only to be saved, not only to be a new creature, but to be sustained by Him. Believers are not one-hit wonders because God has promised that who He calls, He also equips, He sustains them. And the Apostle Paul in Romans 8, the latter part of Romans 8, he says, no, in all of these things, we are more than conquerors through Christ who strengthens us. And I remember reading that scripture early in my life and wondering, how could someone be more than a conqueror? How can they be more than a winner? How can you do more than winning? And what the Apostle Paul was trying to get us to understand was sometimes it's easy to win, but harder to sustain what you've won. When the United States invaded Iraq, we took that country relatively easily. But once we had the country under our control and President Bush announced mission accomplished, we found that there's a difference between conquering a country and sustaining a country. And so we were there for many, many, many years, going back and forth with sectarian violence and things of that nature, because we failed to understand that after you win, then what? And so the Apostle Paul was letting us know that as believers, we're not just one-hit wonders. We're not just conquerors. We are more than conquerors through Christ. In other words, we're sustained. We're not just one-time winners, but we have a sustaining God who sustains us all through our life until He comes to get us. And what we need to understand is that's important because anybody can get it right once. Anybody can sink a half-court shot if they try enough one time. But can you sustain that effort? And God is saying to us, not only are we a new creation, not only are we saved, but we also have been given the sustaining power from a sustaining God to continue in Him and to be blessed and to bless others. I want to turn your attention to Romans chapter 8, verse 31 and verse 32, and it says, "What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare His own Son, but delivered Him up for us all, how shall He not with Him also freely give us all things?" What that text is telling us, that not only did God draw us, well, the Bible said no one can be saved except the Spirit of God draws them. He drew us to us. Not only did He draw us to us, but He saved us when we called on the name of the Lord. He saved us But it didn't end there. Because once he saved us, he created a new creature in us, and then he sustains us. Notice what the text said. The text said that if he'll freely give us Jesus, he'll freely give us all things. In other words, he said if he didn't withhold Jesus, his own son, if he gave him up to save us, if he went through all of that trouble to save us by allowing his son Jesus to suffer on the cross, do you think he brought you this far to leave you? The old church used to sing a song, nobody told me that the way would be easy, but I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. God didn't bring you where you are. God didn't send his son down through 42 generations to walk the dusty streets of Palestine, to be spat upon, to be mocked, to be jeered, to be crucified, to be buried in a borrowed tomb, to get up early on Sunday morning with all power in his hands, just to bring you to the point of salvation without sustaining you. He's a sustaining God, and he will sustain you through all of the ups and downs of your life. He's a keeper. God is a keeper. God will keep you. He will sustain you, and he will bring you to the place of one day we will go and be with him.